I was traveling to RSA, so I didn't get to do as much like catching up on news and stuff. But you know, I didn't see anything major from RSA. That the meetings were more insightful than anything. But you know, per our discussion last week, I've been pretty good at like trying new shit all the time with like Claude Code or different setups with like, you know, using a Raspberry Pi, installing Cowork and all this stuff. So I'm super excited we're chatting. I want to hear kind of how your week went and what you were working on. I know I texted you some stuff I was doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't in any conferences or traveling, but it was a crazy busy week. But I did manage, to make sure I carved out time to commit to, working on a product or working on it 5 days a week. I have like a repo so I can start posting it. But yeah, it mainly did a lot of like building skills
Oh, sweet.
and, co-work. And I don't
I
know if you
I
call that,
I
but I
think
think
I
I
haven't done
think
that.
those are
I'm
like,
super bullish on it. So I'd love to hear like what kind of skills and how you're doing it in your day job.
yeah, it's interesting too. And I don't even know if the skill that I published, I have to go back. And Claude is amazing because I built as you're building the skill, it gives you this eval. And so then you go through, and this is the time consuming human part. You have to go through and like read it and like evaluate it and then comment on it. Like, okay,
Yeah.
this is good, submit. And that can get tedious depending on how like large your skill is. So that was a little time
What are the
consuming.
skills though? Like,
And,
is it like
you know,
visual, like PowerPoint?
oh,
What are the things?
so like, yeah, so the skill I'm using is like we have a few MCPs, and then
And I
let
mean,
me
just
just
for
pull
people
this
that
up
so
quick.
model context
So
protocol, but really that's just to give it like a call out. Like it can call out to Slack, it can call out to like internal systems and pull data, and it's just the easy button. So you don't have to go to the different systems. The Cowork or Claude can just like interact directly, and you stay in that same terminal GUI.
correct. Yeah. So for this specific one, the MCP is ClickHouse, also known as like Metabase. And so basically where we house all of our data. So like our
Why is it
data
called
warehouse.
Metabase? Is ClickHouse
And
Metabase now?
so
Or they bought Metabase, or they launched Metabase? Is
they
it
call
different
it
than
Metabase. Let me
Supabase?
see.
Is that, are they trying to compete? Because Supabase is like taking the world by storm for vibe coding for backend database. Like competes heavily with Google Firebase.
I think it's just like the visualization.
Oh, okay, the
Let me
BI
see.
side. Cool.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's just the BI side. I call it Metabase but the ClickHouse is, where the actual MCP. So I stand corrected. So, but yeah, so that for this specific one that I'm referencing is like, you have them MCP set up and then just going through and, building the right queries, but it's all like natural language, but then making sure that there's like certain flags because, knowing I've interacted with it on the like Metabase front, that it can sometimes throw incorrect data. So like going through, just like cleaning that up, but then, just building the skill so that like, here, deploy this skill, now pull me, top revenue teams, in the last week. And then over the last year, what has their normalized volume and like just where so you can just sort of naturally language go into it, run these queries. Whereas before, like unless you were proficient at like SQL, you have to go and spend time like
Yep.
waiting for the data team to spin up a dashboard for you to look at. And you may have all these things. And so the fascinating part about it is now it's like just real time, like asking a question like, oh, who was the slowest growth last week? Okay. And then as you're waiting for that to generate, you start to think of other questions. You're like, oh, and so like if you were to ask this to like a data scientist, they'd be like, dude, stop asking me all this. Like, I
Yeah.
gave you your one dashboard, you're good.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Be happy. Stop
so
slacking me. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So this is just, that's the power, right? Because like
And this is
it
all
it
via
pulls off
Claude
all
desktop. Like you on, is it on Cowork or is it on Claude Code? Okay,
oh
cool. So
and
so
cowork,
it's no
but
terminal. You're not doing anything crazy with commands. It's literally you just, it's got all the integration set up. And so you're just typing and it's just talking to you. Kind of very similar to like a ChatGPT Claude.ai like chat session, but it now can pull in all the relevant data.
yeah. And so the skill helps it to
Oh,
stay
yeah. Yeah.
within that framework too. So you say, hey, just use this specific, MCP, here's what the guardrails look like. These are the things that you should flag and then like give it like prompts to flag for anomalies that you've historically seen, and so sort of can watch for that. So it'll say, hey, based on this data, you may want to like look a little deeper because this
Very
is
cool.
something that's been
This
flagged.
might this might not be
Super.
it might be redundant, but I started using, I think it's Playwright MCP, and it's a local MCP, but it essentially, and there's like Puppeteer is another popular one, but I heard that it was getting deprecated. So it's essentially an MCP server that allows Claude to interact visually with like their website and take the screenshots and then iterate on that. And so it has access to all the data coming from the MCP, but I use that when I was updating the WordPress. So that might be interesting because I'm trying to lean towards it taking the first pass of if it did a good job or not before asking me. Because right now it just finishes and it's like, is there anything else you want? Do you like it? Is there anything else you want? And I go look at it and it's like garbage. I'm like, what did you do? This is what the fuck, man? Like you didn't look at like just imagine an intern coming over and be like, I did it. You're like a toddler and you're like, what the fuck is this, man? You just created more work for me. So I'm trying to get it to like, what do you think? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, well, this is kind of messed up. I was like, okay, let me try to do it again. You want me to do that? It's like, yes, fix your shit.
Yes.
So
Yeah. No, I think on that note though, the thing that I've started to do a lot more is I'll ask it, and I don't know if this is dumbing me down or if it's helping me become more articulate, but when I run something, whether it's on this example of like the data, I'll ask it like, what am I missing here? Like, what questions can I be asking about this data that I'm not probing into? And just to see like what it responds back with. And sometimes it comes up with fascinating things, right? That like I didn't think of. And I think you've used the analogy before too, of like the professor or the student aide. But I also often think that like now Claude is a helpful professor who's willing to like almost like the Socratic method of like you're learning from like the philosophers, and they want you to like question it a little bit deeper. Like, okay, so I gave you this, and then now it's up to you to ask me more questions if you understand what
yeah,
I've given you.
totally. I think that's the right way. I come up with like juvenile comparisons because I think laughing is one of the best parts of being alive. And yeah, I think I call it a bunch of genius kindergartners. Like, like they're brilliant. They're PhDs, but they still need their sippy cup. Like I was talking to my brother about it. It's like, dude, you nailed it. I used a less endearing example, but pretty similar. Like super high IQ, no EQ, and still struggles to like not you go to the restroom and get it all in the right spot. Or remembering to wash their hands. Like so you gotta. It's a good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so very similar. So one of the things I did, I started on the weekend before RSA, and so I got Claude Code working on my Raspberry Pi, and set up. Then so I got that working for two reasons. One, I wanted to try the new remote feature so that it kind of worked. So I was having some issues where it actually Claude Code would run, but the prompt would stay on my Raspberry Pi terminal and not actually come back to the phone. So my wife's like, "What are you doing?" Because I kept walking between the couch and my office, just like which is annoying. And so that seemed to kind of work. I think it times out or something because then like the sessions went idle and then I couldn't connect to it even though my Raspberry Pi is still on. So maybe I was thinking about maybe implement some like a Tailscale, which I call like a serverless VPN. There's no endpoints. It's kind of just I don't know like SAS secure access, SASE overlay, whatever, not to go technical. But then you could like log in, reactivate a terminal remotely and do that kind of stuff and enable remote control. At least that's my thought. But the whole reason I wanted to do what I wanted to try was Cowork because you've spoken so highly of it. And I wanted to try the dispatch feature and things like that. Small thing, but big. There's no Linux distribution for Cowork. So, but there is a repackaging of all of the Microsoft libraries, open source projects. So I actually downloaded that, installed that, but it can't run. It couldn't enable the workspace, which I'm guessing is kind of like the area that would like orchestrates everything and connects to your different connections. So that was kind of a bust, but I was able to get Claude Code up in GitHub. So that's pretty cool. I could do that remotely. And I've got a Mac Mini because, we're probably going to get a family computer just because my kid's getting older and I don't want them on my laptops. And so they do Canva on the iPhone or iPad, but I kind of want them to try Code to Canvas, for example, and then they log into their schoolwork. But I'm going to create my own profile there, and I'm going to install Cowork, and that'll be like mid-April when that comes. So I'm excited about that. But I need to go back and create the article because it's
Nice.
pretty straightforward and it's pretty cool. Like the remote function works pretty well. Next, though, I want to try the Claude Code Cloud because you can also register repositories in there. So I'm wondering, it's almost like it's just a Claude Code terminal in the cloud, and then it'll just manage your Git and make your pushes. And so every time you spin up a Claude Code session, it'll be like, go look at the Git and then like be able to do it anywhere. So I'm wondering if that might be a better way instead of this dedicated hardware. So I'll report back next week.
Yeah, that's interesting. The cloud. Yeah, that would be fun to hear. My question too, and this is just like completely transcendental. Like you said, somebody repackaged it for Windows. I'm curious, and I give the people who took the time to do that, and maybe it doesn't take much time, kudos, because I would rather be spending time playing with Claude than like making packages for somebody else to like go install.
Yeah, I think. Yep, I agree. I'm super thankful for people that do open source in general, right? I think it's a labor of love, not
Yeah,
a economic output for them. It's still pretty amazing. So
yeah,
but maybe now they use Claude Code to do it. Who knows, right? Like to rewrite everything. So, but
yeah,
I think that I started on the technical, but the idea here was kind of, and I'm sure someone will comment or say something like, "Oh, there's a better way to do it." Just use it on your phone and connect to your own Google and things than that, which is fine. I could do that. I could integrate everything. I'm thinking about it, and that's probably what I'll do with like once I have the Apple. But the idea was, if I got my tax documents there or this or that, whatever it is, hey, create this new presentation, do the research on, RSA announcements in 2026, draft me a new presentation, and I could just check in on it on my phone while I'm on the go, right? That was kind of the idea. Because one of the annoying things is if on the weekend, if you're waiting, I'm just watching TV, or if I start the project, then I just sit there and so I'll just go watch TV, or then I'll get up 10 minutes later and see if it's done. But you never know if it's going to take 2 minutes or 10 minutes. So that's a little frustrating. So that was the idea. Like if I have my
yeah,
phone, I could have it working. So I think by the end of April, I think I'll have my Gen AI productivity tech stack figured out and be able to do the things that are possible at the time, at least. So that'd be cool. And yeah, so
yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure by then too, we'll have even cooler stuff because I think we were talking about how they're still building but slowly releasing.
yeah,
So we'll probably have Claude
yeah, Opus,
something and
yeah, Claude no
Claude no
job.
job.
So and just a
So,
dude, the art. We're going through some pretty crazy negotiations, and I know I say this all the time. I sound like a broken record. Relationships still matter. Being liked and trusted and competent and respectful matters because it means people are gonna pick up your phone call and like making stuff happen. Like I was trying to work with like kind of on the business side for this negotiation because we needed a way to like up level a conversation so it wasn't just about the numbers and create like an outlet for like people that are frustrated so we can unstick, right? Both ways. Like the customer can complain, we can be like, look, this is the reality, right? So it's bi-directional. And with the logistics, meetings just weren't working out. We got something in the calendar Friday before. And so then I just had to call the VP of the negotiation guy. I was just like, look, I need your help. Like, we got to punch this through. I know it's not what you want, but because I was kind of trying to not circumvent him, but keep it separate. So there's plausible deniability. It's like this is all a fucking corporate game, anyways. Of like finance wanting
yeah,
they want to pay the best ROI, and so do we, and it's just like a zero sum game in a lot of ways, right? So anyway, negotiation shit. How do we increase the pie? What are the outcomes? But it's just like if you didn't have those relationships and you can't make it happen if they don't trust you, right? It's just like we had a lot of executive meetings. We met with the CRO, and it's just I've been caught up with an old VP of my previous customer, and we grabbed beers. We're just checking in, like how are things going? And then I rolled over somewhere else, and I had dinner with like a director of alliances, and we are kind of like doing game theory strategies on like how some of these kind of strategic partnerships may or may not work out, and like how do we hedge risk if it goes south, and but still maintain the relationship. So, just, and I sent you that article, Claude Code, or, Anthropic opens the Hormuz Strait. Like, I just thought that was hilarious. Like, not to make light of anything that's going on over there, which is now impacting everyone in the area and the globe indirectly or directly. But it's like, I don't know, there's just this exuberance around, like, have you pointed Claude Code at it? And it's like, it's somehow going to get fixed.
Yeah. I will say though that it's still, there's a relationship part, like, yes, we're sort of secure in that manner. And I don't know if it's 100% there. And I'll give an example too, because, I've always said, like, oh, like customer support or service would be one of the first that
Yep.
could be really
Oh,
quickly
dude,
automated.
I got this terrible fucking story about
So
it. Yeah, go.
yeah, well, this will probably be as good as mine. So, when our customer Slacked us in our shared Slack channel, and they're like, and it was a technical question, and typically I can answer them because they're just like API, like, oh, hey, what's the param here? What
Yeah.
should the response be? And I can like easily bang it. It was a little bit more complex, so I just dropped it and into Claude Cowork, knowing it's already ingested all of our docs, internal docs as well. And I said, oh, help me answer this, this customer question. So it spit out something, and it even referenced that, like, hey, this one parameter has been deprecated, which I was like, okay, this looks legit. So I just copy and pasted it. And luckily, like, I have like friends who are engineers who are also in the same channel, and he happened to see it like 2 minutes after posting. He pings me. He's like, dude, delete that. I was like, oh, he's like, we don't have that response. Like, he's like, your Claude code is completely wrong. He's like, here, let me hurry and edit it for you. And, it sends the corrections to your, just click edit in Slack and recopy paste this over. But yeah, to my point, like, if I just had some like support bot, like,
Yeah.
answering my
Upload
Slack
API
questions.
key
Yeah,
to X, Y, and Z, bank account or whatever. Like, you just, yeah, 100%, man. Yeah.
yeah. Well, and here's the kicker too. Like, right as like my engineer was responding, their team responded. They're like, "Oh, this is super helpful. Thank you for this." So then I had to like come on to the top. I was like, "Oh, quick note. I had to correct a few things in here that I just found out had also been recently deprecated, like CYA myself." But like, customer just looked at it and was like, "This
Oh,
is great.
and
Thank you."
they're just going to copy and paste it because that implicit trust, mine's not in business,
Yeah.
is 100% personal, but I ordered a monitor, for a Dell monitor for the MacBook that's coming from Amazon. And it's funny because a couple days I was like, man, the monitor never came. Like, what's going on? And I had been like, babe, why did you order bounty towels? Like, I get bounty towels in the closet. She never orders towels because I always pick them up at Costco. Like, that's weird. Like, I'm just like, oh, did she just not see? Are we out? Did I mess up? Turns out they shipped me fucking bounty towels instead of a Dell monitor. And I'm like trying to work with the bot. Like, I'm trying to find a person to talk to. So first I started in the chat, and it's like, oh, it's like, something wrong with your delivery? I was like, yeah, you sent me fucking towels instead of a $300 monitor. Like, I was like, did someone steal it? No. So you can see in the picture, like, bounty on the delivery, right? So I screenshot that because I'm like, so I'm going through like multiple return cycles, and it's asking me questions, and I'm like, yo, I don't have my package. How do I get my package? And they're like, thank you for your response. I'm like, what? It's like, no. And then I call the phone. Well, the system's already seen my like stuff on chat, and what I'm trying to do, it's like, I authorize it. And it's like, oh, would you like to like finish this return? I was like, yeah, bitch, I'd like you to send my fucking monitor and take my paper towels. And it's like, finally, they're like, oh, well, a representative can't help you until Monday at 5 p.m. CDT or some shit like that. I was like, this. Now I'm like, so I process the return. I'm going to drop it off tomorrow. And I swear to God, I'm going to get a $55 credit and no monitor. Like, and I can't get a fucking person to talk to me. And this is the productivity savings of Gen AI and your customer service. It's like, so infuriating, dude. So sorry for all the F-bombs, but I'm just like, I'm still pissed on it. It's like, this is something a human would be like, oh, I see it. Look at the image. Like, that's not it. Okay, cool. You're good. And, luckily I'm in a position where $300 is not stress me out. But oh my goodness, dude, there was a time when $300 was like easily like, oh, I'm eating ramen for the next 2 weeks for rent, because I need the money to pay so I can live here. It's like, and not go into credit card debt. So yeah, it's a bumpy road up and to the right, but bumpy.
Yeah. But on that note, whoever orchestrated and built those integrations, they did the integrations well, if you think about it, because the chatbot sent, when you called, immediately knew what your conversation was. So, and that sense of it, like, it's great. Like, all of the data
Well, I
is
mean,
talking to each
that's what's
other.
so funny about it, right? So yes, technically the integrations worked. And I don't know the actual system, but we sell Amazon Connect, right? So, but it's just funny on the back end. Someone's like, this is great. It worked like it's supposed to. It's like, did y'all like,
Yeah.
is nobody monitoring the outcomes here? Like, this outcome is jacked, but like, well, this talked to this, and then it interact with them, and then and then we marked it as resolved, so it's done. Outcome based pricing, that would be $5. Congratulations, you have a pissed off customer. So yeah, but yeah, it did work.
Though.
The systems all AWS worked. Yeah, so the AWS part worked. But another one I did, and I totally forgot about skills. I did one for work. We said Amazon Kuro's our IDE, so it's like a cursor. And so I'm working to setting up all the MCPs, but I haven't done a ton, and I don't know that it's that. It's kind of like a replication of Quick Suite or Glean, but probably more powerful because you have more kind of like knobs to turn if you spend the time. But one that I think is way more meaningful is I use Claude Code, like I said, to update my WordPress pages. So we've got like a site, right? And I just wanted to update the about us. And so you're able to go into WordPress, create an app password for a user. So I just put that into gave it to Claude Code, pass it to the key. And so I sent it, this is the URL, here's the login. And then I was like, I've learned, right? You don't want it to go like automate the whole thing until you kind of have the process really built of like, okay, I like the output. And then you have to go back and kind of like construct what steps did it follow to get this? Because it could try an entirely different process. And I'll give some examples. So it did a great job. I think I sent you the link for not being a designer. And essentially, so I have WordPress and I have Spectra and Astra installed, which is built on the Gutenberg. So that's the visual editor. So you can create these blocks and containers and add image. And, this is a paragraph. This is an anchor link. So it did that really well. So then I'm trying to build this site out for a relative who runs a handyman service to get on Google Business Profile. And I already have all the content, but it's 44 pages and I don't want to build all the site map and all that stuff. So I'm like, oh, I'll automate this. But I was like, okay, automate it, but only do it with 3 pages. So different domain. And it basically just took all the markdown files and it created the pages, but it looks like a Word doc. Like it literally, a white background, black text, placeholder for image, just like straight, like literally just like, oh, I did a pan doc, markdown to docx and like open it. Like that's what it looks like. I was like, what the fuck is this? So I was like, no. You need to go use the editors. And it's like, do it on these 3 pages. So then it did that and it got worse. So like all the text is like to the edges and nothing lines up. And I'm like, what are you doing? And so I was like looking at, it's like, oh, first it says, oh, I did a good job. What do you think? I was like, this is awful. And then it's like, oh, you're right. I was like, use, Playwright to look at this. It's like, oh, I see it now. And then I think it did it one more time and it still is crap. I was like, okay, look, I need you to use the Gutenberg editor with, a knowledge of Astra and Spectra. And I want a layout where it's, the text is on the left and the image is on the right for that row. And then I want you to flip it. So then I want, the text and the image on the next row to be alternating, right? So then it was able to execute that and do it pretty well. And so it was super powerful in some respect. And I still don't know why it works so well on that one page on like our site. But then when I tried to scale it out on the other site, it just like, it broke. So I'm excited to go back and kind of try to put more context around the process. And so I'm going to have to ask like, hey, how are you doing this? And so then I can give it guidance moving forward. But it was just kind of cool. It's kind of like the co-work, right? Oh, we connect to WordPress, we connect to Slack, we connect to our backend, I don't know, Confluence or SharePoint. And so now it's kind of like, this is the new desktop, right? This is where all of your work is being done and you're just kind of orchestrating it. And so being in GTM with content management, I thought was super fascinating. I think it also has interesting implications around like N8N, because that's kind of, I would have a Python script, which is what it tried to do, but it's like, for future pages, like one of the recommendations from Claude was like, oh, well, you can create like an N8N trigger where you drop in the file in a Google Drive and then it adds the page. And so this kind of like skipped all of that. It's like, use case of one. It always has to go through me. I have to open the terminal. So it's not really scalable, but it was kind of crazy because all of us work on our own individual spaces. You can't build a Zapier or N8N automation that like does every AWS field reps thing perfect. Where like there's always that nuance. So this is probably the best way to do a lot of use cases. So, anyways, I just wanted to share that because it just seemed I got a glimpse of like how powerful this can be because it would take me probably 4 hours to do this manually, and I might spend more than 4 hours trying to automate it. But at least I don't have to do just the rote work. And once I crack it, then like it's gonna be so much easier for every other website, every other page I need to create.
Yeah. Yeah. It is it's fun. And I guess maybe it's fun for nerds like us who just find this kind of stuff like interesting. It reminds me of like, I never really learned how to like code, but I don't know if you remember, and this may date me, but like the early, let's call it like MySpace days, or like the early HTML where like you had enough power, or like the
Yep.
WYSIWYGs. I don't know if
Yeah.
you even remember Dreamweaver. It was like Dreamweaver was like a tool you could use to build a website, and you could like build something. And when you would publish it, like for me, I was like, yes, like, look how good I am. Like, you know, and then like you learn enough HTML to be dangerous. And like MySpace came around and you could like
Yeah.
modify
Colors
your
and
page enough
background.
to like, you're like, oh, like, but where we're at now, it's like, oh, I've got so much more power than I did
It,
before. And I didn't have to like study.
it is so crazy. It's definitely. I think if we're, I like to emphasize because I think we talked about last week. OpenAI is saying that we need to like double down on our strategy, not do side. We have to focus, right? Then they're also, Anthropic's investing $100 million in their partner program. So you need people like the obviously the how quickly things are changing, the diffusion, like they need to speed that up on the change management side. So I'm very bullish on people. Well, I still, but I'm still concerned. But we get into this trap, I think, or the mental model I guess I would share is if you're arguing on like can it do it now or it's dumb or it sucks and you just focus on all the shitty things and you're just shit posting I think you're gonna get passed by. Like it is leaning in because those are the opportunities for us, right? Those are that's where your incremental knowledge, if you figured out how to smooth the speed bumps of the AI, that's how you're gonna be relevant. And so you should be excited that it sucks. And like, how do I daisy chain these things together to do even more of what I do so that I'm even, more valuable in the market? And so I just, bullish on humans, don't want stagflation or job loss. But at the same time, like, we got to lean in and figure out like how we can do more with them just to like make sure we have, stuff for our families and, we're not being left behind.
Yep.
So,
100%. So on that note, everybody go out and learn and be curious.
see you
We'll
next week.
see you next
Thanks,
week.
guys. Cows.